Hey guys, welcome to another video. And in this case, we're going to cover cause and effect essays. So this is a follow-up to the topic that we already saw in class, but in case somebody still struggles with the topic, or in case you just want to beef up your notes, then this video is for you. I'll try and keep it as brief as possible, but at the same time, not skim any important information. So without any further ado, let's dive right into it. So we first must establish what we use cause and effect essays for. And let's analyze a few situations. So we know that lightning causes fire, and that if you guys don't really study for a test, and instead you just spend the time watching movies all day, then you're probably not going to perform as well as if you had studied, right? So the cause and effect essay is going to tell us how one event leads to the other event. So basically, how the cause is going to take us to the effect. And that's basically what we use cause and effect essays for. Now, we can direct the essay in one of two ways. We can focus on how the cause is going to lead to several effects, or we can focus on how the effect is going to have several causes. So for us, let's think of our main topic, which has been animal abuse. So we can talk about how many causes give us animal abuse. How many causes does it have? Or we can talk about the effects that animal abuse has. So it just depends on what you want to focus on. What do you think is going to impact most? What is the most important thing that you should be focusing on for your personal needs? All right, let's go a little bit into an example here. Yeah, this is something that sometimes we often do not elaborate enough on. So when you guys are writing, I'll kind of skim through this information, but you guys are welcome to pause and read this information. But it's basically when you guys write a story, it's very important for it to be extremely clear for anybody reading what events are going to lead to what other events. And we just don't simply imply that somebody's going to understand something. So the example that is presented here is that uh, normally, like, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but when you finish washing your car, it rains either the next day or in a couple of days, but it tends to be, or people tend to perceive it to be around the same dates, right? So obviously, you washing your car is not going to provoke rain, but we need to make sure that the reader doesn't just understand that because it's implied, right? We need to use the correct vocabulary. We need to make sure that we're making the correct links between the causes and the effects that we want to make, and not just imply things or not be too specific with our wording. All right, now let's focus a little bit on one of the two types that we're going to talk about, and we're going to focus first on the effects. So if we want to write an essay that focuses on effects, sorry, we're going to start by what our outline should look like. So basically, if we want to write an essay about the threatened habitat of polar bears as a result of global warming and the melting of large parts in the Arctic Circle, our essay would look something like this. Okay. So remember, we're focusing on the effects. So the topic, the introduction, sorry, the introduction and the conclusion are the ones that are going to have the thesis statement. The thesis statement is basically what's going to tell the person what you're trying to persuade them, if you are trying to like sell them a story. In our case, we're trying to remember uh, basically how the effects are so negative that people should sterilize animals and so on, right? So that's in the thesis statement, which is in the introduction. The conclusion has the thesis statement, but in different words. So you restate it so people really understand what you're trying to get across. You have the hook. The hook is the main thing that's going to be at the beginning, something to catch the reader's attention. Like, oh, okay, I'm interested in reading this paragraph, right? Or this essay in this case. And in the conclusion, you can also add a suggestion, opinion, or prediction at the end. Like, do you want to add something else? Do you want to add your opinion? People should do this or whatever. Right. Now, what's going to change in these two different methods is in the body. So in this case, we're focusing on effect. So the body, each paragraph is going to focus on a different effect. So as you can see, paragraph number 2 is going to talk about the first effect, which is dangerous swimming conditions. Paragraph number 3 is going to talk about the second effect, the scarcity of food, and paragraph 4 is going to talk about the third effect, which is the reduced population. Now, what do we have here in the bullet points? So the bullet points are the subtopics. So what are you going to talk about once you mention this? So we're going to talk about, in the first case, the sea ice platforms farther apart. Like that is why the swim conditions are going to be dangerous. So this is what your outline should look like a little bit when you guys start working, right? So everything is very clearly planned out, and you guys don't have anything missing. Like the bullet points should be clear example of what you're going to talk about in that paragraph in particular. All right, now we're going to go to the one that focuses on causes. So now in this case, we're going to write about the causes of global warming, such as excessive carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And in this case, like I mentioned, we're going to focus on the causes. Now, if you can notice, the introduction and the conclusion do not change. They do not change one bit. So we still have the hook, the connecting information, and thesis statement, which is restated in the conclusion. And obviously, we can add either a suggestion, opinion, prediction, right? Like I said, what is going to change is in the body. So the body, each paragraph, instead of mentioning one effect, they're each mentioning one cause. So as you can see there, they are 3 different causes. Now, it's very important for us to be as specific as possible, depending what you want to mention, like I mentioned in the previous example, with the bullet points. So these bullet points are going to tell us what we're going to write about. So for example, when I write about human activities, I'm going to focus on carbon dioxide from vehicles and not recycling. These are the main points I'm going to talk about. I don't really have to write about anything else. I just need to elaborate on these 2 points. Make sure that you guys, when you are writing your essays, you only focus on the ones that you mentioned already at the beginning. Okay. Now, next one. When you guys select your type of essay, you have to make sure that you remember some questions. So in this case, we have a couple here. What is the effect? What is the end effect? I mean, is there one primary effect, or do you guys want to focus on several? And do we have one cause, or do you have several causes? So it depends on what you guys want to write about, and like I mentioned, that's going to determine what you want to focus on. Okay. Now we're going to see some examples, and in these examples, they're all kind of really obvious, except for the last two. The last two don't really mention the obvious word that you're going to see, but let's keep in mind that, and let's analyze them a little bit. So here are a little bit of, or some effects. There we go. So we got some effects and some causes. So causes here and effects over here. So the first topic says the causes of the high divorce rate in some countries. So right off the bat, this topic really speaks to you, and it tells you, okay, we're going to talk about causes. We're not going to talk about effects. No real questions there. But you don't always have to be so obvious. It can be something like the reasons new teachers quit. So this is our effect. We want to talk about the causes that lead to this effect, right? So we're going to focus on causes. And here's another useful question here, question word, which is why. Why only a small percentage of people read newspapers today? So we're going to talk about the causes that lead to that effect. So maybe might not be so clear for you just from reading it. Obviously, the ones that say causes, I mean, they're the most obvious, right? But maybe these two are not. But just ask yourself, what does the question mean, or what is it trying to convey? What is the message trying to convey? Now, the ones that focus on effects, obviously the first ones, like we already saw, they mention the word effects, the effects of pollution in my country. So I'm going to talk about the effects this has on my country, not about the causes. I think it's extremely clear about that. But what about the second one? It says the impact of technology on education. So that one is not going to talk about the causes of why it has an impact. It's going to talk about the impact it brings to education. So you're talking about the results, the effects that this has, right? And you're going to mention all of them, or as many as you want to mention. But if you think about it that way, this topic does let you know, okay, so I'm going to talk about effects. That's what I'm going to mention. And yeah, these are just some examples. So this is when you guys practice in task number 1. If you want to go back there and just revisit the answers, maybe that'll help you out to understand it more. You are more than welcome to. Now, as for the supporting details, so supporting details, we already know they're gonna help you. Sorry, they're gonna help you with what you want to say, right? Either you want to mention the causes or the effects. But how are you gonna determine which one you should focus on? So there's one way to do it, which is brainstorming, basically. So you brainstorm ideas, you brainstorm causes, and you brainstorm effects. And normally, what people do is they go with the one that has the most options, right? But again, it depends. It depends on what you want to say. Like for our example, again, if we're talking about animal abuse, animal cruelty, we always have to remember and think, which one do I think has the most impact? Which one do I think is gonna educate people more, the causes or the effect? It depends on what you want to say. So even though you might have some, like let's say 10 in one and you have 5 in the other one, if your message is benefited a little bit more by talking about the ones that only have 5, then you might want to focus on those 5 instead of the 10, right? So yeah, this is just basically knowing what details you want to use to support your thesis statement. Now here are some examples. So in this case, we're talking about the difficulty of learning English, and here are just some causes and some effects. So you guys are welcome to take a little bit of a break, maybe pause here and check the causes and the effects, analyze them, and make sure that they do make sense. So in this case, here is where we went to task number 2. And oh yeah, by the way, this is evidence file 2 in case somebody was lost. But this is where we did task number 2. I welcome you to go back to it, revisit it, check the answers. If for some reason you don't have it, it should be on Blackboard by the time this is up. Possibly, if not, wait a little bit, but it should be on WhatsApp for sure, 100%. It is on WhatsApp. If you still have questions or you need anything else, ask me in the classroom, okay? But yeah, we move on to a strong thesis statement for cause and effect essays. So a strong thesis statement indicates whether the essay is going to focus on causes or on effects. Sometimes a thesis statement uses words causes or effects, like we already saw, right? But this is not necessary. So you guys don't have to be so specific because sometimes it's just implied, as we're going to see in some of the examples. In addition, a thesis statement sometimes includes a number such as 3 causes or 2 effects. So this is 100% optional. You don't have to mention like the top 5 reasons why this. I mean, that's if you want it. If you want it, you can, but not necessary. So here are some examples if we were to write something that focuses on causes. So we have the first example, which reads, many customers prefer to shop online for 3 important reasons. So right off the bat, you know that you're gonna read 3 reasons, not 4, not 5, 3 reasons why this claim is true, right? So that's the first one. Second one says the increase in obesity in our country is due to food commercials, cheap fast food, and video games. Again, this one is not mentioning a number, but you are getting some examples. So we're not saying like reasons, we're not saying the word reasons, but we are getting some examples. So we know that we're going to talk about the causes that increase obesity in our country. So these are 2 examples, and now we're going to go to 2 other examples, but in this case, the ones that focus on effects. So we have the first one that reads, this essay will discuss the effects of watching too much TV on children's family life, interpersonal skills, and school life. So again, it mentions the word effects, so you automatically know that you're going to talk about the effects. It's very straightforward. And the second one says, most people are not aware of the positive effects of simply walking for 20 to 30 minutes per day. So we automatically know that we are going to be talking about effects. These are good examples of thesis statements that you guys might want to use in your paragraph and your essay, again, I mean, it's gonna be in the introduction paragraph, but it will be part of your essay. So this way, the reader automatically knows what to expect in the essay, right? And then you would start going with the body and scoring details and so on and so on. Now we have reached the end of the presentation. If somebody still has questions, you can leave them here in the comments. You can ask me and what's up. You can ask me physically in our classroom, wherever you want. But make sure that if you do have questions, or I mean, ask a friend, whoever. But make sure that if you do have questions, you ask somebody and you get answers to your question. Okay. Hopefully, this was useful for some of you. And yes, that's going to be it. I will see you in class. Make sure that, well, yeah, you finished evidence file number 2. By this time, you should have already. But yeah, see you guys. Take care. And yeah, relax.